Okay, so greetings and welcome everybody to this discussion between myself, Dr. Stefan Lanka, and Ricardo Maarman. We're very grateful to Dr. Lanka for giving us some of his time today to discuss our court matter, especially regarding the isolation of the virus. And as you may know, Dr. Lanka is a specialist in this field. He's a virologist. Just correct me if I'm wrong, Dr. Lanka. You are a virologist, are you?
Well, I would not term me a virologist anymore because the term is not useful. And in a scientific point of view, nobody is allowed to use this term because it means poison of disease. And well, if you check the presented evidence, you'll see only that typical molecules or the structures in dying cells are misinterpreted as being part of a viral, and then a model is set. And on the other side, if you know the real biology which works in us and in life in general, there is no place for something which is only taking and not giving. So life is based on symbiosis in all aspects, and it means it's a historical thing that we were forced into thinking like this, into models like this. This is a dead end. And it's already 2,500 years ago where the stage was set that the people presented to such kind of science had to believe and have to think it's in this way, because inside this model there is no any other explanation possible for a disease than a defect or infectious agent. And this is what I was happy the last years to found the causes and the steps in our history which were ultimately leading into such false pictures and explanation of life and disease. And yeah, I mean, me myself, I consider the strongest thing what I did to not try to answer the question, what is this then if it's not a virus? At the time where I only saw that all the models in infectious diseases, immunology, genetics, all fall into parts, but I had no idea to explain it except rare moments of severe intoxication or the malnutrition, things like this, you know. But I said, excuse me, I can't. And this, I think, that was strong for years. And only from the year 2000 on, I met a medical doctor, German medical doctor, and he found, starting with its own, what are the causes of diseases, etc. And he could do so because in its own cancer, he saw a signal in the brain and saw this signal with everybody else with the same diagnosis in the same part of the brain. And then he saw it with other diseases in other signals in other part of the brain. And so he could from one thing step to the other one, and found also this explains all kind of mental changes or so-called mental diseases. And this is absolutely important for us to eventually get out of this black box where we are forced to thinking good and bad. And eventually my job is to create an easy to use brain scanner where you will not have to go into computer tomography, into X-ray scan to get the signals out of your brain, but an easy to handle scan so that everybody get his things on his handy and wow, signals in my brain. And then it says, look, oh, your right hip is aching. Why? And explaining the things going on. And or you have a fever, but it's not going up more than 39 degrees, or you are depressed, or, you know, things like this. And this is going to attract attention for a deeper and a better kind of view onto life.
Thank you for clarifying that, Dr. Lanka, and thank you for clarifying that you no longer yourself as a virologist. I'm very glad, you know.
Because when I was a young student, I decided not to study chemistry, but to study biology, because here at the Lake of Constance, I ran into a really sincere scientist, and he told me how much polluted the water of the Lake Constant is, and that nobody should eat the fish from there, you know. So, and then he said, okay, Father Rhine, the River Rhine cleans a little bit the lake, but everything eventually goes into the oceans. And that could be dangerous, because if they acidify, then they would, you know, reduce their production on oxygen, and that could be a risk for humankind. So I decided to study biology, and doing marine biology eventually, I found a structure, and I thought, oh, looks like a virus. It's presented to us in the textbooks, small, this size, you know. And but it was not doing harm. It was useful for the algae from out of which I isolated it. But I was inside this concept at this time. AIDS came up, and I was warning the students, you know, in front of HIV, till a professor of mine, we became friends, said me that something is wrong in this field. And so I started to question everything. And of course, in the end, I found that what I isolated, it's not a harmless virus, it's a meaningful structure. It's a kind of mini spore, which is organizing itself and becomes greater and greater. And this is a part where life becomes visible for us. And this is consensus in this field. And but on the other side, similar structures, the bacteriophages, said to be viruses of the bacteria, they have been the model that such structure should exist in humans, in animal as well, and should look like them, you know. But never ever they could isolate it. And so they just took some parts out of dying animal or human cells in a test tube and put it mentally together to a model and said, look, this is a virus. There must be a virus, you know, in order to explain the diseases when a group gets ill, or one after each other in a family, or over a country or continent, whatsoever. And there in our science, we have to think that it must be a material cause. And this is what was driving the history in the end. And I'm happy to get a deeper understanding of life. And of course, in order to overcome it, I do a constructive way, this with my brain scanner. And years ago, when I was fighting, I was heavily fighting in the juridical system, right? And also I ask that I offer €100,000 for a scientific paper which claims and proves the existence of measles virus. And in the first round I lost, but on a high level, and the federal court I've won. And so I learned a great deal how the juridical system is working. But I also realized at this time it had no effect in the public, because mass media were, you know, silent that I won, and the implication on the whole thing, because one of the papers said to represent the measles virus, and the court says none of the 6 have a proof for a virus inside. One of this, it's not only the basis of the whole field of measles virus, but it's the whole basis of new virology after 1954. And with this trial, I took away the whole foundation of virology. But now there is a chance, because the whole world it's afraid with Corona. A lot of damage has been imposed onto people, especially older, or the children, right? Put them under fear, under, you know, life-threatening conditions, and damaging the economy. So they can't get rid of this thing so easily. And now more and more people are listening, and got eventually to the point of the whole story: is there a virus or not?
I mean, that's the whole point, Dr. Lanka. That's why we continue, because we obviously, and I've been researching this since last year already, and even before, while researching, you know, vaccines and that, and a whole lot of before the lockdown last year, before the announcement of this pandemic, but researching, you know, specifically this COVID-19 pandemic since last year, and obviously came to the conclusion that there is no virus, this hasn't been isolated. And then Ricardo, I'm going to introduce Ricardo now, because Ricardo was the person who applied to the Constitutional Court initially, like I explained earlier, and then went to the High Court. And so you're the right person, and thank you very much for that, for explaining that, because we'll go more into detail just now. But Ricardo, if you can just introduce yourself and then tell us, give us the background, give Dr. Lanka the background, and then we can move. Thanks. Ricardo?
Thank you very much, Dr. Kirsten. I really appreciate this. Appreciate you setting up this wonderful meeting. And Dr. Lanka, I've been watching your explanations quite a bit. And I must confess that your work and your explanations has driven me to what I'm doing now here. Because when I was looking through this to try and make sense of what is going on, your explanation of what was going on gave me, brilliant clarity. My background is in political science, and I know these guys deal with deception. So I was on the lookout to find out where is the fraud here? Where exactly is it? And thank you to you and your work, you've made it clear. And I see now that the fraud was actually at the heart of the matter, the virus itself. And so thank you very much for your work. We've taken, the media has tried to quiet you, but your work has snuck out and spread all the way here to South Africa. So thank you very much. And
yes,
look,
thank you. I mean, we were already nearby in the year 2000 when President Thabo Mbeki smelled the rat and asked public the question, is this poverty causing the diseases in South Africa here called AIDS, or is it the virus? And he said it's an open thing, and should we invest in humanitarian issues or in chemotherapy, right? And what happened, that the critical scene, the AIDS dissidents, would not allow that the question on the virus would surface, And it was easy at this time. One of the most popular and meaningful critique of the scene was Peter Duisberg. And I'm very grateful to him, because he was the one opening the eyes. His work showed that he deconstruct all the numbers, all the definitions, but he had a mishap that he's one of the good fathers of the idea of retrovirology. And so when I stepped further in his steps and questioning the virus itself, he became mad, because it's too much, And in order to calm down the whole discussion, I would, and not only for this, but for being objective, I would really recommend you and everybody not to talk and speak about fraud. This is our history. This is our development. Of course, it's a misconception and it's anti-scientific, because they never controlled their own thinking, their own experiments, right? So it's outright anti-scientific. But don't call it, please, not fraud, because fraud means intentional misbehavior. This professor writing this sentence in the trail, he believes in these concepts, and also they need the help, that they are able to open their eyes and their hearts for reality. And therefore I developed those 7 points, which are so clear and so sharp and so short that everybody reading this and then reading a paper on virology, on SARS-CoV-2 or on HIV or on Ebola, he realized that there is only self-fooling. But this was historically grown. And my mistake was in the past to write bad books, AIDS, the betrayal, on vaccination, But finally, when being under pressure, public pressure myself, and I realized how hard it is to cope when somebody else is saying that you are a murderer, or that you're doing it's not only false, but it's harmful. I mean, nobody can stand it. And we see even the critics, the big critics then at Duisberg in AIDS and HIV at this time, 20 years ago, or now the big critics in the field of Corona, they are not touching the virus. They're not touching, and they do like it would be there. They are criticizing PCR testing, but not touching the core. Is the concept proven? And therefore everybody should save his face in this process. And I'm sure, And this is the thing to win in court. If you go into the court with this attitude, being absolutely fair and objective to everybody, then you are going to win automatically because the facts are clear, the argumentation is easy and short. And everybody who is willing can see it. And this is how to win a trial, to put it as easy as possible so that everybody else, not only the judges, do understand what's going on. Yeah. And then
I just want to say, though, I agree with you that maybe, some of them, based on what you've explained to me here, that there is a bit of a misconception. So that, as you say the correct word, that some of them might be fooling themselves. Sure. But look, I would take that to some degree, that because there was a bit of, mud thrown into the theory of virology, as you've explained out to us here, a lot of the people doing the work might be having that idea. But you must, what I do find a little bit suspicious, though, Dr. Lanka, is that how did this mud get thrown in the first place? And the other thing that I find suspicious is, how is this mud now, in terms of virology and in terms of how viruses are understood, how this is now so beautifully fitting into a glove that people could use to alter the political and economic circumstances of the world, and many of the other objectives. So although I do agree with you that, yes, your scientist that has gone through the study and have been taught this kind of theory might just be innocently the victim of a false frame of understanding. But I think, in order for him to get into that false frame of understanding, someone must have structured the textbooks, and they must have probably understood where this is going. I might be wrong. And then, of course, someone is now reaping the benefits politically out of this, because there are clear beneficiaries of what is happening here. And those beneficiaries, whether they're doing this intentionally or merely they are benefiting inadvertently. How do you see that?
Well, look, as I've been in this field for more than 30 years, and I was really fighting and publishing all those books and, giving public presentation and so on. And, but in the end, when I understood where the concepts arose from in our history, then I could not make responsible a single person. Of course, first I made responsible for HIV Gallo because he manipulated a little bit his cell cultures. They died. Whereas Montagnier, who received the Nobel Prize in 2008 for HIV, he said, no, the white blood cells are multiplying due to the virus. But he also said, Montagnier, always he said that if the people don't take toxic drugs, poppers, to inhale it, then they will get healthy and they even get rid of the virus. This he always kept saying, and he said, if this with my virus would prove right in future, then this would be only one of thousands different cofactors causing to a collapse of the so-called immune system. Therefore, everybody was hating Montagnier because he was saying, no, my virus is not killing the cells. It does the contrary. Where Gallo added a little bit of hydrocortisol to his cell cultures and the cells died. So, I have a real virus. It's killing the immune system. I mean, he lost the trial between France and United States because he had nothing new. He was using the same picture, same data. Montagnier sent him to check if this could be true, but Montagnier thought he found in 83. But at the end, he lost all realities to the test, And then when I was reading the autobiography of Gallo, I met him several times in person and in some very funny situations, right? But when I was reading that his younger sister died with leukemia, then he was saying himself that he is going to find the virus causing this cancer, and this was it. The dying of his sister turned him manic, and he became director of the National Institute for Cancer, right? And so you know, I see, oh, he had this motivation. And then he, of course, in the cellular concept, which was established in 1858 in Germany, you know, you are forced to think in material interactions only. And when every life should come out of one single cell, an elephant, a tree, or a human being, then you have to think that there is a substance which is there for to build your own and genetic material, and which is coordinating your metabolism. And you are forced to think there must be a genetic material, and viruses are said to represent a certain kind of genetic material. But also this thinking is completely disproven in the scene. And even there are some lay journals in Germany publishing this in 2008, that all models of genetic molecular genetics and genetic engineering were all disproven. I mean, and for me, yeah.
So, Dr. Do you think then that what we are dealing here with is wrong thinking? And then obviously that wrong thinking is what's producing these kind of ideas of isolation and that sort of thing. That in your view, it's not necessarily that from that wrong thinking we can infer that there's some bad motivation or intentions. Obviously, I'm just trying to understand your view. Is that your view on the matter?
Yes, there is a very big German thinker. He's unknown. His name is Eugen Rosenstock-Huessy. You will find him in all my texts. You'll find a lot of books in English, because he lived then in United States. He died in 1973. I consider him as the strongest German thinker we have. And he wrote in 1956 already that the kind of science we are doing, it's not able that we even realize that something is in development, or we cannot detect something new. The kind we are doing science is only to establish the existing point of view, how we see life. And he wrote in 1956 that we are doing cancer research on the falsified models of infectious diseases. He wrote this in 1956 already, you know. I mean, and you see that he was not understood. He had not a big audience, you know.
Yeah.
But
so what you're saying, Dr. Lanka, is that the sort of self-fulfilling prophecy, they have the theory that there is a virus, a concept mentally, and now they are in a pursuit to prove and to find the evidence to meet that.
Absolutely. Rosenstock-Huessy said, we had a free science till the year 1900, but then science was funded by the state. So the real science, they are isolated from reality, and the researcher who found something new, it's not funded. Only the established science is funded. And he describes this mechanism way in detail and said they are automatically doing a pseudoscience to keep up with their old models. And I mean, the old model, it's the theory of the four liquids of the body. And if they stack, they turn into poisons of disease. And that's the name, the Latin name, it's virus. And of course, we have the observation that when somebody is drinking a toxin, alcohol, for example, then he can withstand 2 liters of vodka, you know. Yeltsin, for example, he needed 2 liters vodka to talk in front of the parliament. Everybody knows. But the youngster drinking a liter of vodka would definitely die. If not, you take it out of his stomach, pump it out, you know, he's going to die. But not he had the antitoxin against alcohol because he's lacking the enzymes, right? But this thinking was toxin of disease virus and antibody, you know? This is good and bad. And our materialistic point of view forces us into this thinking. And I really recommend you to read my text already there, because I describe this history, and this makes you feeling confident, because it's so important. And well, I have just I published a magazine on my own since the year 2003, and this is the latest issue, Corona. it's going about more, about everything. And so I wrote the whole context, starting with the Greek philosophers establishing our democrat, our point of view, how nature works, how our body works, how we became here, you know. And this is a thing which enrolled in our history. And of course, I could go deeper in detail. The Greeks took over the Ayurvedic philosophy, but they cut out of the soul, because they said, no, we don't want it, democrat. We don't want a spirit, consciousness in life. No, we want to have no God. We want to know nothing, no spirit, because the religions always induced fear onto the people. And therefore, they came up with the model, the atom model of life, and said this is all happening without a field, without spirit, without consciousness, without God, without nothing, only materialistic interactions. And this is it, what we have. And we are in a mental castrated situation when we think that what we were taught 200,000 years long, that this is science and this is, you know, the framework in which we are able to think, then you are lost, you know. We know that a word can kill, voodoo works, and cancer diagnosis is causing death. And this is where the Dr. Hammer, I ran into him in the year 2000. And eventually I could throw my scientific anchor to answer all those questions and to bring together a lot of pieces of knowledge to get a real good picture. And it became clear that a word can kill, a word can heal. But, you know, when the Christians are only allowed to think on Sunday in church, you know, that from a word it's becoming flesh, and outside in the reality, working in the lab, no, this is not possible to think, nor to speak, and less to write, then we are all in this thing. And I'm absolutely sure that this is what is going on. And
so Dr. Lanka, you would say that, I want to be correct in saying you must follow the money. They always say follow the money if you want to see what's going on in the world. So would it be correct to say that science has been funded by people who have a certain agenda, and they've created a pseudoscientific process in order to serve their agenda? Because it boggles the mind that scientists can do experiments without doing any controlled experiments. And I commend you for actually doing the controlled experiment recently, which you published. It boggles the mind that they have done no controlled experiments in isolating these so-called viruses over the years for many decades now, that there's no controlled experiments. That is not science, okay? But the word, everybody in the world actually believes that viruses exist, and the germ theory and so forth. So are you saying that science has been funded by people who have no morals and who basically have an agenda that they want to fulfill, achieve certain goals, like controlling the world and killing a lot of people? Or is it just a process that unfolded over the years that the scientists have made a mistake in doing uncontrolled experiments?
Look, when I was a young student, I was in the 5th term, I got my own lab, right? Mm-hmm. Another professor whom I ran into as a younger student, he wanted to have me back into his lab, right? And he suggested me to get a very wealthy stipendia, right? A very prestigious foundation, right? If you are inside there, your career already booms, you know. And at the end, because I had a critical attitude towards genetic manipulation, because I was reading Erwin Chargaff, the great biochemist who wrote a lot of books, and later he became my friend and advisor for 6 years, right? And so they refused me to get this stipendia. The biological professor, he was absolutely enthusiastic. Wow, the first stable virus-host relationship. Now we can study where viruses come from, because this thing, it's not killing the organism. What fantastic thing, you know. But the part from the philosophical faculty who checked me, you know, he refused to give me the stipendia. can you imagine when I got this stipend? I had a secretary, I had a lab technician, you know, I can fly to every conference on Hawaii and Honolulu, right? And I mean, then I have to make my thing more important, and the less and less you can look right and left. And we have two things. I really strongly recommend you to read Rosenstock-Huessy. And he said how science disintegrates when it's institutionalized. And the same thing you'll find with the great Ivan Illich. Ivan Illich is a giant hero as well. And I ran into him in 95, but in 76, he wrote his book, The Nemesis of Medicine. And this book you have to read. And he explains when medicine is part of economy and is forced, like everybody else in our kind of economy, to have a 5% surplus every year due to the mechanism of money mechanism, then medicine has to exaggerate. They have to make their diagnosis, widen their diagnosis, widen everything. And Illich wrote in 76 that medicine, it's freaking out in one day and inducing fear, and with antibiotics are killing everybody. This corona was foreseen by Illich. He has not seen it in the field of virology. He has it more seen in the field of cancer, you know, and prophylaxis, and you know, and but this is a logical mechanism. And of course, when there is too much money involved, it attracts strange people. And the higher the position of a politician or somebody in economy, the less he understands what's really going on, you know. They are far away. And I mean, it's long since now the company Gorex make the nice shoes, you know, where the air can go in and out, you know. And yeah, when a part of the company reaches 500 people working in there, they have to split by their own constitution. Why? Because if it becomes bigger, nobody is able to oversee, and then they make institutionalized mistakes and mismanagement, and you know, too much money in the organization. And I mean, this is all known. And
can I ask Dr. Lanka, can I ask your assessment of this situation that's going on now? So this pandemic around the world, the SARS-CoV-2 virus claiming to kill everybody. What is your assessment? Do you think this is an institutionalized error that is going on here, or do you think there's
no? I think it's a Western, in meantime, globalized, good, bad, hysterical, self-fulfilling prophecy. It's a self-ruling mechanism. And I warned 10 years ago, I warned, therefore, in my magazine, I said, look, if we cannot get virology under control, this is going one day, the world is freaking out in this fear, in this automatism being tested, and so on and so on. And I wrote this because I clearly saw this. I mean, in 2009, I contributed to the fact that the German population, 93% of the German population refused the vaccine because it became public. There are nanoparticles inside, and they are dangerous, right? They are most dangerous. And that the government and the army has the same vaccine, but without nanoparticles, without adjuvants. And so this made a lot of people, set them nervous, you know. Some medical doctor came up, and finally they had to burn 93% of the vaccine bought for the whole population. Only 7% took the vaccine. And what happened then, in the Federal Magazine of Health, there is the Federal Ministry of Health, publish every month a magazine. And the issue 12, 2010 has the title, you'll find it on the internet, Pandemia, Lessons Learned. And they analyzed why the people refused taking the things. And they found out that the some experts were discussing in public. In future, that could not happen. Only one expert is allowed, and that misinformation is spreading on the internet. Therefore, we need censorship. Even our constitution says there is no censorship. The state employed people ask in this issue 12/2010, we need to have censorship in order to get the vaccine done. But look, this was bird flu. From one night where the talk shows were full of fear, you know, the next day it was over. Nobody, never ever was speaking about bird flu. Nobody was vaccinated. They just stopped testing and that was over. And the virus followed the rule and was kept silent, doing nothing. I mean, this is sure. And
but don't you think that what you just explained there, that this cannot just be some innocent mistake, you know? Because if you are making a mistake in terms of your wrongful thinking, then you wouldn't take all these active steps to try and cover it up, or even to learn how you can perfect it 9 years or 10 years later. I mean, that doesn't speak to me that just pure innocent mistakes that are, some of them, some people might be just making innocent mistakes, a wrong frame of reference, but all what you've just explained, the censorship, the doing a study to see where we went wrong, to do it better, that speaks to a little bit more though. Don't you think, Dr. Lanka?
Well, just go into university, go to meet some medical doctors or some students of medicine or the biologists and ask, oh, could it be there's no virus? They look at you like you come from another planet. You know, this is unthinkable. It is unthinkable. Please go to university, watch those people, you know. I mean, it was when I, a youngster, arrived at university, our supervisors told us, oh shit, you know, when we were young students, there was activity at university, nothing, they are all keen to read books day and night. And I mean, nothing is happening. And this is it, just go to the university, watch at those people being there, you know, they are not free. It's like in school. They have to sign every hour they are present. If not, they are not getting their stamp at the end of the season, right? I mean,
so the idea that we have, I mean, many people who haven't, you know, they look up to professors and all of that. So the idea that they have that in these universities are free thinking and discovery of new knowledge. So that's just all a bunch of wrong thinking or deceitful lies, the idea that we have.
Look, at my university, I talk to all professors of the university, of all faculties. I ran to everybody. I copied articles, everybody, the big philosophers, my biology professors, and they said, look, well, we can't compete with you, but be quiet. It's not good for the university, for the reputation, and we'll get less money for our research, so please keep silent.
You are making, right?
Okay. So, well, to make this, to bring this to an end, I really ask you to read the literature, to think about this, and then you will see that this point of view onto the things, how it evolved, that's true. I was in the institutions. I know a lot of persons. I know some virologists. I met several times Gallo, Montagnier. I was a friend to Kerry Mullis. We met. I told him things. He got big eyes, big ears. He told me things that at this time I don't knew, you know, that, and most important, that with a dirty PCR, where all the various kind of parameters you have to adjust, if they are not exactly called stringent, then you can even create nucleic acid, which has not been there before. You know, and this I knew already in '97. I mean, and when I met him on a AIDS conference in '97. So anyway, So this is it. I don't want to contribute to another fear. I take away the fear out of biology. And it was not me. It was Dr. Hammer who thought that every process leading to a situation we call disease is at least in the beginning, a meaningful, senseful activity. Only when it runs too long, when the trauma is running too long for years or months or too much in parallel, right? Then in the healing phase, or yeah, it can be dangerous, right? Or complications and so on and so on. But he was the first man in the known history, what I know from the last 2,500 years, where he took the notion of the bad outside biology, and not outside from biology, outside from human behavior. Because when he found that traumata act in the same time on your body and on your perception and on your behavior, right? And it could be too strong, much stronger than you, so that in a condition of depression, you have no power to do anything. This is terrible. I know what I spoke. I experienced such a situation, you know. Or you are manic, you are completely out of control, you know. And all these various conditions a man, you know, can experience, he found in form of signals in the brain, and can, even not knowing the person, seeing from the signals of the brain in what kind of perception, what kind of situation, what kind of feeling this person is. And I mean, this is the most important thing for humankind, that we can enter or leave this good and bad notion, which eventually always is going to lead into war, right? Because when we understand ourselves, what changed our perception, our behavior here and then we are not judging about anybody else, because we know when somebody is reacting strange and even dangerous towards himself or to others, you know, with aggression and whatsoever, then we know this, he is suffering such a condition, and we can see it in the brain. And I mean, that's for me the New Testament of biology, was Dr. Hammer found out, because we are able to understand ourselves, and we have back the old notion that spirit works, that a word can kill, a word can heal, and every part of your body has a perception on its function at this site, inside somewhere, or a bone or an organ or a skin, and in the context of the body. And this is the result of his finding. He got back spirituality into science, into biology. And Corona is hop or top. If we stay in the materialistic point of view, there is good and bad. There is the need to explain things in materialistic, mechanistic explanation, a bacterium, a toxin, a defect, a lack of immune system, or a mutation, a damage of genetic material, or even that matter is lumping together, you know, makes a conspiracy against your own body, eating you up. I mean, that's the concept of cancer, criticized by Rosenstock, you see, in 56 already. And I mean, that's the challenge what we have. Most of the population, you know, some are questioning virology. Oh yeah, Corona, what's going on? But most of them are believing in this concept called cancer, and believing that the bad thing, which is stronger than your own body, is even able to walk inside your body. This idea is called metastasis. And of course, if you believe this, then you are believing in flying metastasis, in viruses. I mean, and that's our culture, and we have to face it. And
the thing is that the mind has a powerful impact on the body. And I mean, I done a lot of work on the subconscious and on brain science. And that's why I'm very interested in your scanner. Very exciting development there, Dr. Lanka. I'm also familiar with Dr. Hammer's work, very, very familiar with German new medicine. And the spiritual aspect of our being, we have 4 aspects of our being, and one aspect is the spiritual aspect, which is very important. You know, we are beings, and spirituality is very, very important. But I've been looking at this COVID-19 pandemic from a geopolitical perspective also. And I come to the conclusion that this whole pandemic is something that has been obviously orchestrated to usher in two aspects. One is transhumanism, and the other one is technocracy. Now, transhumanism is they're using this vaccine to control people. It's a way of controlling and tracking people. And I've just discovered in the last while that in this vaccine, apparently there are magnetoproteins which can affect the neurons of the brain. I must send you that article. Interesting stuff that they discovered that these guys are doing, with this vaccine. You're finding that metal objects are sticking to people now. After people have gotten the vaccine,
no.
objects sticking to them. Don't know if that is due to the magnetoproteins or something else. What do you think?
Look, we should not induce another kind of fear.
No, I'm not inducing fear. No,
look, of course, I know that they use nanoparticles, iron nanoparticles to deliver substances to this or this organ or tissue. But this is definitely not inside the vaccine. What's in the vaccine, it's non-metallic nanoparticle. And if you have the luck that they will stick here and not float too quickly inside your brain, then it's a good for you. If they go quickly away from here, then you risk thrombosis, you risk a swollen brain, dying with brain pressure, But what is happening, a lot of blood is bleeding here. You have inflammation, you have a lot of iron from the blood, and you can easily magnetize this. And then a magnet is sticking. But it's not magnetic on its own that it will hold a metal. So it's easy. And it's really 1/3 of the population being vaccinated, a very strong small magnet is holding, not a metal on its own. So, but the other critics saying that molecular genetics works and that and they think the virus exists and that there is a spike protein and the RNA injected is really producing this spike protein and that it's produced inside our blood vessels and then autoimmune reaction will kill our blood vessels. I mean, this is a concept onto a concept onto a concept, but it has no basis, right? First, there is no virus. Then there is no spike protein. So the mRNA, believed to be carried inside the body, it's going to be digested in the very same moment. Look, I'm reading all these journals. This is here from Technology Review, May 2020. And it said that the companies using no nanoparticles, the RNA injected classically here does not do any reaction, nothing. They could not measure anything. So one big German company, CureVac, who received 300 million euro to develop it, still are not coming out because those researchers are more sincere. And when they try to develop mRNA vaccines for the animal market, they found out, look, there is a contradiction. And but the other company, they went on. And another aspect you were not realizing, two things to set. What is driving this dynamic? One is that for 40 years, a lot of people invested a lot of money into gene technology, but this never ever is going to work out. No therapy ever worked, to the contrary. So, but after 40 years, they are taking their money out and they have to, if not really, then the whole thing would collapse because billions of dollars are in genetic engineering, which never is able to work. So therefore they take it out. And another thing, it's really become obvious, right? After Soviet Union imploded, by the good advice of Gorbachev that everybody should save his face. So there was no war, no shooting, nothing. And it was a really soft change without war, without violence. This we can learn from the Russian, and we have to learn it from the Russian, how such a change is able to work, or that it's able, right? But the military, what they lost their enemy. So they went back to their old enemy, the bacteria and the viruses. The military definitely believe into this concept. There are no people which more which are vaccinated more often than United States, Army soldiers, and with severe side effects. And I mean,
can I just say, Dr. Lanka, can I just say that sorry, you wanted to finish that point. I wanted to add something there. Please go ahead.
No. So this was it, and the Soviet Union gave up all their bacterial warfare already in the 70s, right? Because they understood this is a concept that's not true. What is believed to be said, a toxin of a bacteria, tetanus toxin or the botulinus toxin, it's in reality, it's a harmless enzyme. You can produce 100 kilos and swim, eat, swallow, whatsoever. Nothing ever it's happened, except you put half a liter of it in the brain through the ear or through the eye. And this is the animal experiments, what they are doing, right? And in fact, this is also a self-fooling, which was described in 56 to keep up with their old notions. And of course, nobody wants that the fundament of his belief or scientific, things that it's overthrown. Nobody likes it. It's hard. It's painful.
Yeah. So I just want to come in, Ricardo, you can come in now. So I just want to clarify, there's no virus, which obviously I couldn't find any evidence for. So the spike protein doesn't come from a virus. I mean, if they say no protein, it can't be coding, the messenger RNA can't be coding for spike protein from a virus. So either some protein that it's coding for. But Ricardo, you can come in and Dr. Lanka can pick up that point.
So I want to say, Dr. Lanka, look, I am always fascinated listening to you. Again, you have said what is on my mind, in terms of there is a little bit of fear mongering going on there. And people are falling into that trap. And thank you again for just clarifying. I sometimes think you read my mind, you say what is on my mind. But thank you for that. But what I wanted to say to you is as well, Dr. Lanka, I appreciate, it's good to speak to you, to proper scientists. You and Dr. Kirsten are one of the few proper scientists left, I think. And part of my objective here, Dr. Lanka, is I want the truth to prevail. I want us to return back to truth and facts. And look, I don't have any preconceived ideas. I'm open to any possibility, but I want that possibility to be led by facts, not fear-mongering, not deception, not self-deception, as you say, not self-fooling each other here. And this is why we are taking this court case on. Because as you mentioned, our country, unfortunately, we have been a victim of bad governance and bad politics and self-fooling for a very long time. I'm sure you're very familiar with our history. Yeah. And this is part of what I want to now draw a line with here, is to say, listen, we are no longer going to just take a story. We want the facts. We want the facts. We want to know exactly what is the truth and what is the facts here. Because I believe with you, we can have that peaceful transition. We can have a situation where this chaos that we are currently living can be resolved peacefully. But it's going to be resolved peacefully only when we can demonstrate to people the facts, the truth, in a nice manner. And as you say, not in a manner where we're necessarily going out there from the beginning saying you are bad and we're going to prove it. No. Yeah. We are open-minded, but we are saying, let us go to the facts. Just to give you an example here, Dr. Lanka. We went to court on the 27th of May. We went to court and we asked our government here and we said, show us the virus. We said, show us the virus, give us proof of its existence because you said to us, you are imposing these measures because of a virus. So show it, prove it. And many people, as you say, many people laughed at me. Some people said, that is a retarded question that I'm asking. I had to grow a thick skin when people say these kind of things. But then we went to court, Dr. Lanka. And in the court, the government argued vehemently. I'm going to send you the transcripts as soon as we have. The government said, we do not want to show you. We don't want to show you. And obviously the judge, unfortunately, you also have experience of the judiciary. The judge said, it's okay. The government does not have to show proof of the virus. And so that's obviously we're speaking to you now because we're not going to let the matter end there. We're going to continue. But you see, Dr. Lanka, when people heard these things, when they heard me saying, show me the virus, they thought it was ridiculous. They laughed at me.
Mhm.
When they now hear that the government says, we don't want to show you, now they are worried. They are saying, what is going on here? And so now what we are in the next position, so people want to know, they want to know an answer to this question. In South Africa now, because of what we are doing here, people's minds are ready for the truth now. And that's why we're reaching out to a person like yourself, Dr. Lanka. We want you to help us to get to a point where people can understand what is the truth about this matter. So that once that shift in people's minds can come, then we can change our circumstances without force. Because the only time that we require force is if we haven't changed people's minds. And that's what I'm really thankful for, that you are helping us. And this testimony, I don't know if you received it, but the government, although they said to us they don't want to show us the virus, but inadvertently, by mistake, one of their professors who wrote the affidavit there explained the isolation process. And so now that he confirms they have done. And so now we have them in a position. And we now want your help to demonstrate to everyone, the judge, the people of South Africa, everybody, what are the true facts here and what is the truth.
Okay, thank you very much for having this opportunity. And this is going to help everybody to clarify. And those are 3 sentences. I have them here already. And it's very easy to show how this professor was fooling himself and that he's in the midst of a belief system. And I already formulated the 7 points, which are so clear-cut that when everybody's reading this and reading a scientific paper on virology, original paper, reading what they are doing, then everybody sees they are disproving themselves. And with all the 7 steps, what a virologist is doing, claiming that each one step is on its own a proof for the existence of virus, or of course in combination of all those 7 steps, for none of the 7 steps, they carried out and documented control experiments. And this means in the same time, this is not science. The scientific rules are defined since the year 1989. Internationally, the rules are written down, and the first rule to every scientist to question every time and every day its own findings. And only if the own findings are not able to falsify, to show the technique I use, it's not using the signal, which I think it's a proof for this or that. If this is not possible, the falsification, then I can say I have a scientific fact. But what they have proven, that they never ever in their history were publishing the control experiments. And therefore, it is one thing you can already say in public, virology has disproven themselves and have proven that they are anti-scientific in every of the 7 steps what they are doing. So no scientific paper, original paper of a virologist, can be used as a scientific evidence. And therefore, the law of infectious diseases is asking that the base of everything, of vaccination, of testing, etc., is based on a scientific level. And this is violated by the virologists on their own. So, and what I'm going to do the next week, I comment these 3 sentences and outline them, and I will prove them with my own oath. So somebody else who wants to disprove me must come with his own oath and his statement to disprove what I was saying. But I'm sure as soon as the 7 points are out, virology is going to give up themselves before the court trial in order to save the face, because it's so clear-cut. And I mean, in the juridical system, you know, on your own, the most important thing beside the facts is if the laws of thinking and the logic are fulfilled. And if there are contradictions, the argument it's not worth anything. And this is it. And vice versa, or even better, I said our argumentation have the facts behind them, the rules of thinking and the logic. And it's so strong, it can't be anything stronger than to put it in a very short words, which are very clear. And yeah.
I have read those 7 steps, Dr. Lanka. Yeah, excellent. Very well, I must say. Thank you for that. Will you put that
this is
in your affidavit also? Will that be included?
Yeah, we bring it into the court trail like this.
Oh, okay.
That's it.
Ricardo, go ahead. Yeah, go ahead.
I just asked Dr. Lanka, you mentioned there that you, on the measles virus issue, that went to the federal court in Germany, and you won that case. So we, in our constitution, in our rules in South Africa, that our courts must consider such a ruling that has happened in a country like Germany. And so I would like to have maybe, if it's possible, to have a copy of that judgment that you won, so that we could also use that, because I just want to ask this as well. On that measles issue, was it also similar, the issue of the method of how they say they've isolated? Is that how, on the basis of which you've won it? If so, then I would like to also have a look at that judgment, please.
Yes. This judgment came into existence because the expert, the court was asking to check the 6 publications delivered to the court. He said none of the 6 papers have a proof for existence of a virus in its own. But arguments from the 6 papers put together mentally into a 7th paper that would deliver the proof, right? But this is a contradiction, because the 6 papers all were on a different kind of aspects and covering a time from 54 to 2007. And so the higher court said, no, this is not possible. Dr. Lanka asked, the proof must be in 1 paper, and it's not possible to say we lump 6 publications together from a period than more than 50 years and say this is the proof, you know. But the most important thing is, I was silenced at the lower level. The court was forbidding me as a virologist, as a PhD in virology, to ask the expert of the court, you must imagine. And they knew I would not keep silent. And worse for them, they changed the court, they mixed it up, and there was a young lady just having their first day at court after university. And she was not brainwashed. And she was asking the 2 decisive, most important questions. She was asking the expert, if there is not a publication where there's a proof in one, as a virus is the easiest structure in biology, it does not need a lot of papers. Is there such an easy structure or not? And the second question, are there the control experiments? And before, he said 2 times in his written statements, of course, the control experiments were there in every of the 6 papers. And there he knew that I would put him under oath. That means 1 year of prison when he's like, and here admit, and this was inside the protocol, that none of the 6 papers have control experiments. And from this time on, the expert became nervous, red face, trembling. And the friend, the judge, who made this strategy longhand before they opened the trial, was nervous and finally stood up and was telling the sentence. But by the law of how a civil process is organized, the expert has to be sent out. And then we start the second process of checking the facts, right? And then another part has to be dealt with But this never happened. He just stood up and put the sentence because he knew, you know, the next thing is that I would ask, put him under oath. And so therefore, he also knew, the expert, that with the question of the younger judge, the comp-plan was out of control. I was not allowed to ask him a question. And now the sharpest question came out of the mouth of a young judge, a young lady just finishing their PhD at the university. So, and therefore I knew I won at the higher level automatically, because that was such a big mistake what he did. And I had proofs that this happened, you know, that he was violating the law of civil process. And this also means ultimately 1 year of prison for the whole judge. I mean, and therefore I knew that I'm going to win in future, because I had this argument, and that there are no control experiments. So this is really, really strong. And this is now part of right statelyhood in Germany and in the European Constitution. Every sentence, we have the law and we have the sentences. This makes together the right statelyhood. That's the basis. And now we have to apply it into working law, right? And it seems that now a medical doctor in Germany is staying up and using the measles virus process only as an argument that the whole basis of virology has been flawed by court, because the paper from 54, the first of those 6 papers, is the exclusive basis of all virology, not only measles virology. So I would say for South Africa, we won't need this put in the measles process, because we have a lot of translation work to do. We put it onto the 7 short points to keep it really, really short. Otherwise, we open doors for years of discussion if a court case from another country could be used in African conditions, blah, blah, blah. You should not offer them the hand to start a useless discussion, which is time consuming and for years, you know. So bring it to the point, the virus, and that's it. And this measles trial works in Germany. Our daughter, she's 13 years old, and she's under this law to get vaccinated against measles virus. She should get vaccinated at the end of July, but due to Corona, this is postponed till end of December this year. So end of December this year, I am empowered to go to the law with this sentence, because I am personally struck, you know, by the obligation to vaccinate our daughter, right? So before, if it would have been July, I would have started it already in June, right? But so I'm going to start in November my own trial using the sentence of the measles virus trial.
Yeah.
Ricardo, I just want to bring up one point. I mean, all these virologists that have done these isolation experiments, studies now on SARS-CoV-2 last year and some this year, I think, they are fully aware of the control experiment process as part of the scientific process. Would you say that's true, Dr. Lanka? They should be aware of it, right?
No, look, because they are so sure of what they are doing, and it is so important, and they believe that the control experiments have been done previous, you know. But if you start in the paper of 54, you know, you see Enders, who came up with this idea: when cells in the test tube are dying, then there must be a virus. He used no controls, you know. And later, several years later, somebody did this control experiments and said, look, they are dying in the same way, but they argue, oh, this could be another virus already being present in the cells before, right? So, and this is, they never discuss this anymore, you know. So, and you should know, Enders, when he published this idea, this first paper from the measles trial, He published this on 1st of June 54. And he termed itself a speculation. He said he doesn't know if it's true. Probably what they are doing in the test tube has nothing to do with the measles in reality, right? So these findings have to be subjected in future to the most rigorous questioning, and experiments have to be done, blah, blah, blah. Never happened. Why? Half a year later, he became the Nobel Prize for a completely other thing. But getting the Nobel Prize made out of this speculation from 1st of June 54 a scientific fact. I mean, all popes together have not the authority a Nobel laureate has. I mean, the Nobel Prize, it's the proof for the definitive best form science could ever be, right? And nothing is questioned. And this Nobel Prize for a completely other thing, and even a thing out of the old virology, because virology gave up themselves in 54. Till 54, the idea of a virus was a protein, a toxin like tetanus or the botulinus toxin, which is able to self-replicate. That was the idea of virology. But they did control experiment, gave up themselves. But this idea, Enders got the Nobel Prize on 10th of December 54, was out of for an idea he had in 48. In the old thinking of virology, you know, he got the Nobel Prize for this. I mean, but then everybody was happy, Enders, and Enders himself, a year later, he wrote, all future development on measles vaccine is based on my paper. Why he did? You should know the details. If you don't know the details, you are in a trap of good and bad thinking. Well, you know, everything what you are not understanding, you judge in good and bad. But in the end, if you have the reasons, you see them. And it was this, Enders, he was a bacteriologist, right? And he tried to use the same techniques, getting bacteria to produce bacteriophages. So to kill the bacteria, and then they transform themselves into phages, and he did the same thing with tissues, animal tissues, from green monkey, kidneys. So, but what he has overseen, that he was killing them starving and using cytotoxic antibiotics. So, but he equaled the dying with the presence of virus, like when bacteria transform themselves into phages. This is reality. But he equaled this, what he knew as a biologist, and he made the basis. So we have viruses should be there because the cell's dying. We don't know how they look like, and the future is going to show how those viruses are going to look like. So, and why he received the Nobel Prize. This is a very important detail. Till 48, it was believed a virus can replicate only in the tissue it is damaging. And in the night, at evening, somebody came to the lab of Enders and said, look, I have poliovirus. And poliovirus at this time meant a piece of brain from a deceased person died with a polio diagnosis, right? There's the poliovirus. And then they would use a slice of a healthy brain, put the deceased piece of brain on the healthy brain, and when the next day the decay from the sliced, from the deceased piece of brain goes to the healthy brain, they say, oh, the virus is multiplication, right? And then they said, look, I have no healthy brain, but in order to throw it away, we use chicken fibroblasts, so chicken tissue. And I have not, probably a child is going to die the next day, and we have healthy brain again, but at the moment I don't. So, and the next day they found that around the dead piece, the piece of brain, the chicken fibroblasts were dying as well. And they said, ooh, the virus is not tissue specific, it's replicating even in animal tissue. And this was a revolution. The viruses are not specific. But what happened? Jonas Salk heard about this, quickly bought all human embryos, taking the skin and the muscles from the human embryos, putting in the fermenter, putting a piece of brain of a person with polio inside, start the decay of everything, stopped it with formaldehyde. The New York Times claimed that this vaccine is safe, and that because Jonas Salk tested it on his own and his family, never done. And Enders, who had the idea, was lost. So you will find this information on the English Wikipedia, you know, what happened. So everybody was angry with Salk. He became very rich, and Enders was with empty hands. So he was jumping on the second most important infectious disease. This was measles. And you see, a year after the Nobel Prize, he said to the same paper, which you can read, and you see that Enders himself is criticizing. That's probably not true. A year later, he said, this is the very basis of all future measles virus production, because he lost the hand on the production of the polio vaccine, because Jonas Salk was stealing the idea and just multiplying it in a great number. Before, you were limited to human brains, you know, healthy ones, and they were rare, as you know. So, and therefore he could buy all the human embryos from all the abortion things, and this is how the polio virus was done. I mean, that's the story. At the end, it's easy. At the end of the day.
Yeah. Can I ask Dr. Lanka, is it possible, I understand your concerns about using German judgments and rulings in South African courts. Mm-hmm. I'm fairly confident, as I say, in terms of, I will check with our legal experts mm-hmm. here, but I'm fairly confident it can be done. Obviously, we'll have to consider strategically, as you say, do you want to open that, etc. Mm. Is it possible maybe for us just to have a copy of the judgment and see if we can translate it, and then we can see how we can utilize it or not?
Every important document is already there on my webpage. It's all there.
Okay, so we just have to download it. That's fine. Okay. You can download it from there.
It's a chapter of measles virus process, right?
All right. Okay, we'll download it from there. Ricardo and Dr. Lanka, we have a minute left. We wrap up now. If you want to come back after we get kicked out again, we can do that.
I have to go.
You have to go. Okay, then maybe we can wrap up now then.
Yes.
Right, so I'd like to say thank you very much again, Dr. Lanka, for giving us some of your time today. I really appreciate it, and your knowledge and expertise and experiences. I appreciate it. Learned a lot from you today. Thank you so much. Ricardo?
It's my pleasure, and it's my pleasure to serve South Africans, to serve the Africans, because during my studies, I was active in a voluntary organization for Southern Sudan, right? So I'm a little bit aware of the things going on in Africa. I always have an eye what's going on there on Mother Africa, and yes. I'm more than happy.
Thank you so much. Thanks, Dr. Lanka.
To help. More than happy. You cannot imagine how.
Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Dr. Lanka.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you.